I am Dr. Robin Orozco. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Molecular Medicine, and starting next school year, I will be teaching the undergraduate immunology course and eventually the immunology graduate course. I chose my career path a bit through, I guess, a winding road, I think you can say. When I was 16, I read a book called The Hot Zone, which is a science fiction novel about the Ebola virus. And I remember reading it and becoming just fascinated that science could be cool at that point. Before that, I was like, science is stupid. And that really changed my mind. And so as a young kid at 16, I knew I wanted to do science. I knew I wanted to study viruses, and I was very interested in that, but I didn't know what a career in science was or what it looked like. So when I went to college, I knew science, and people had told me, well, if you want to study viruses or study disease, you go get an MD, which was a bit misguided advice. And while I was in college, I saw people with the letters PhD behind their names, and I did not think it what was or anything. And then I started figuring out, oh, if I want to do research, if I want to actually study things and not be in like a clinic treating disease, I want to understand the disease and its etiology, that's a PhD, like a career research type position. So in college, that's when I kind of started to get into that. And from that point on, I've been pretty, I become obsessed with the questions I'm studying, and I love them and I want to break them down, and I think about them constantly. And so what I was thinking about, what do I want to do as a career with science? I was like, rather than thinking like, I want to run a research lab, I want to be a professor, I was thinking, I want a career that allows me to be obsessed with my question and my research. I love training students, and I love being in the lab and working with trainees. And so I wanted a career that would let me do that. And I really like writing grants. I think it's fun. So I wanted a job where I could write grants. And when you put all those things together, that's a professor. And so that's what kind of led me to this career. So with my limited teaching, the teaching I've done has been mostly with a broad overview of virology, actually, and understanding not only how, like, the basic virology, what different types of viruses are, but also then getting into antiviral immunity, and also understanding how we can use viruses as gene therapy vectors, as medical tools. So my PhD is in virology and gene therapy, which is why I was kind of teaching an overview of those sort of topics. I am really looking forward to teaching immunology, though. I think when I was teaching the virology courses, whenever I got to the antiviral immunity section, I would get like extra fired up about it. I actually, in graduate school, I got commonly introduced as, this is Robin, she loves viruses. That was because I would get in that like antiviral immunity section, I would get so fired up and excited about stuff. So that it just stuck. And I think teaching the immunology class, I'm going to really enjoy it. I don't know if the students are going to enjoy how fired up and nerdy I get about it, but I'll enjoy it. So, and hopefully they also get something out of it as well. I think the first goal is just understanding immunology. Okay, that's, I think, a given. But I think what I really hope that they're going to come to appreciate is that immunology is such an interface of all their other biology classes that they're learning. You have to have a background in genetics. Genetics play a really strong role in immunology and immune responses. So does the biochemistry that you've taken and the cell biology that you've taken. And it's really a class of taking all those basics from your general science education and smushing them together to understand how something complex and beautiful protects our body against a variety of diseases. And what I study is about why does it fail sometimes, especially in a virus infection, or why is it sometimes better? And it's all really complicated. So it's not an easy topic to grasp onto, but when you get it, it's thrilling, and it's just, you can address so many things and understand so many things about human biology, and not just human biology. Essentially all organisms have some form of an immune system, and seeing the similarities between our immune response and Drosophila's immune responses is really cool. And so I think I hope that the students take from the class that kind of appreciation of everything kind of coming together and putting it into a system that is potentially in their minds maybe more tangible, or they can grasp onto and see maybe why they're learning organic chemistry and biochemistry as a biology major. It matters a lot, especially in the immune system. One thing that I've noticed, been here shortly, is the amount of undergrads in research labs. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we have enough labs for all the biology undergraduate students, which is unfortunate. But I think every single lab has undergraduate students, and those undergraduate students play a huge role in the research lab. And that is a unique thing, I think. So I have 2 students right now. They're my first 2 undergraduate students, and the sheer talent, like innate talent and intelligence that they have is incredibly impressive. And again, I've not been at a lot of other universities, so I can't completely accurately compare, but I have been thoroughly impressed with the undergraduate students here, and just the opportunities that they're able to have, and that they truly go out and try to get. I think that shows a lot of motivation and initiative and determination, which, regardless of their career choices downstream of KU, those are things that are going to be really helpful. The broad goal of my research is to understand how mutations in our genes and the genes that are involved in our immune response, how those mutations change our immune response to virus infections. So the way I explain it is, recently with the COVID pandemic, I think it's very obvious to people that some people get really, really sick, and that's awful. And some people seemed like, I didn't even know I was sick. They didn't even know they had the infection. And this range of disease that we have, some things that can influence that is the strength of your immune response and how your immune system is functioning. And the mutations in genes can change your immune response functioning. And we don't really understand how. So I study that broad question. Obviously, there are a lot of mutations, and I can't study every single one quite yet. And so we study one very important mutation in a gene called PTPN22. The mutation we study is in about 5 to 10% of the human population, or the North American population, and predisposes people to autoimmune diseases like type 1 diabetes and arthritis. And we study kind of the other side of the coin. It's like, yeah, it's really bad that it does that. Is there a good thing that it does? Is that good thing possibly protecting against virus infections or helping against a tumor? And the short answer is yes, it does help in those situations. And so we're trying to understand why that is. Yes, so I currently mentor 2 undergraduate students, and soon I will have 4 graduate students rotating through the lab that I will be mentoring. And then from those 4 graduate students, we'll see who wants to join the lab for their thesis. So eventually I will have graduate students as well full-time, but right now just my 2 undergrads who I'm very proud of. I would describe my mentorship style as, I have no idea. I think it's growing for me right now. I think every mentor situation I've been in up until this point, I've been mentoring in the lab as someone who's constantly in the lab as a PhD student or a postdoc. And so now mentoring as a PI, it's a little bit different. So right now what I'm doing is, so my undergraduates that are in the lab don't have much lab experience, which is expected, and that's okay. So right now my mentorship style for them is I will show them how to do something. They kind of shadow me, then I watch them do it, and then I have them teach me how to do it. So they would have to pretend that they're teaching me, or showing me how to do this new procedure. And then I essentially leave them on their own. Also, with things like I am here for questions, I encourage them to, if there is anything you are unsure about or you're just not understanding, it is okay to come and ask me. It is a judgment-free zone. I have probably asked the stupidest of questions in a research laboratory as a trainee. You can ask me because that's how you learn. I try to foster kind of that independence early on, with me still being there as a resource if they need it. So that's, I think, doing the actual techniques in lab. Mentoring in terms of getting a student prepared to defend their dissertation, I have an idea of what I think I'll do, but I can almost guarantee that's going to change as I actually get students. So I don't know if I have a great answer for that. But in general, the broad approach I take is I really appreciate and try to find everyone's individual strength or strengths, and really celebrate that and help them use those strengths to their advantage and use their interests and their passion to their advantage, and kind of help them carve a path that's going to be best for them versus trying to stick them in the path and the box that worked for me. So as an undergraduate in the lab, to begin, what you would be doing is a lot of lab maintenance work, as we all do. So washing dishes, organizing things, making buffers. My undergraduates can test you. I'm also doing that as the PI. So it's not, everyone has to chip in and keep up that daily lab maintenance. But then for the research, what my model is currently, and this is based off of actually my undergraduate research mentor, who was an immunologist, who is an incredibly successful undergraduate research mentor. And so I copy her model in that as undergraduates come into the lab, and they're obviously doing the lab maintenance stuff, we essentially give them one kind of technique or one small aspect of a project to really become an expert and master in. So in the lab, currently that would look like being the person who is able to titering the virus. So knowing how much virus is in a sample. And you just become the virus titer master guru, level 10 nerd, whatever you want to call it. And as you become confident and independent in that skill and that aspect, which is contributing to the larger research picture, then we can start to grow what you do. So maybe you're titering a virus called LCMV clone 13. We use more than just that one virus. So maybe you're going to add in another virus. So now you can titer 2 or 3 different types of viruses. Or maybe you're going to start doing another type of cell culture that's contributing to the lab. So as an undergraduate, I think, one lane and then slowly grow as you grow your independence. As a graduate student, you're thrown into the deep end a little bit more. Rather than this slow build of this is my one thing that I do constantly, you're given a project. So part of and as graduate students, you typically have research lab experience. So it's not as daunting as it seems. But you're given a project, and with me in the mentorship, we'll figure out the multiple things that you're going to have to do to accomplish that research project. And those projects right now are to look at how the mutation we study impacts a certain immune cell type in the context of virus or tumors. So we break it down. You're not studying everything the lab does. We break it down to a manageable part of it. And then the undergraduates will then help out with, again, the one part of that project. So I do a few different things. First, I love to read. Whether it's reading or audiobooks, my goal is I'm not going to reach it this year, but I try to get through 52 books a year. I think this year I'm only going to be through like 40. So a little short, but it's fine. It's fine. So I go through, I read a lot, I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I consider going through audiobooks getting through a book because life's busy. So I do a lot of that. And for reading, I read everything from like the trashy romance Bridgerton novels to like space odyssey and like Dune type books to fiction and nonfiction. It's poetry, everything, whatever is floating my boat in that moment, I will read it. So aside from that, I am obsessed with my dog. So I have a greyhound. His name is Harry. Anything I can do with him, I do. So we do a lot of dog training, obedience things for fun, just snuggling on the couch. He is lazy and huge. And so he's always up for just like watching some awful reality TV with me and snuggling on the couch. I don't know if that's a hobby, but I'm going to count it as one. So there's that. I also enjoy a lot of outdoors things. So hiking and biking and walking and really just anything to get me out in nature, which I do often with my dog and my husband. Those are kind of the main hobbies, and the rest of the time I work, which I love. Yeah, we like walking along the wooded area by the river. It's really fun. My husband and I have been enjoying going to the different breweries for dinners and stuff. So we're a big fan of Fields and Ivy. We like the vibe, we like the beer, we like the food. So that's really great. A big thing for us is just going around and trying all the different restaurants. So we went to 715 recently, and of course, Silas and Maddie's ice cream recently. The other things, I'm trying to think, like, what else have we done? We've been working on our yard a lot. So Home Depot, we go to Home Depot a lot. It's top spot for us to visit in Lawrence. The Baker wetlands that opened up. I really liked those. I went there with Harry and we did a loop, and I was like, yeah, I am coming back here again. I really like that. We also, my husband and I really love board games. I guess that's another hobby, board games. So we're members at RPG, and we like to go to RPG and have dinner and a drink and play a board game, and that's a lot of fun. The two that stick out to me. So in general, a lot of my science classes, I just really loved. Obviously, I'm in science. It's cool to me. My favorite science class that I liked was actually one called Emerging Infectious Diseases. And it was a very small class. I went to a small liberal arts college in Minnesota. So this class was 4 people, big, 4 people and the professor. And we did this, it was a very like read paper based class. So we read about emerging infectious diseases, and we learned not only about the biology of emerging diseases, so like what that virus or bacteria was doing, but we also learned there was an aspect of the class looking at the public health response and control for it. And so that was a really cool class for me because it was not only learning these really cool basic science things, but we really kind of got this whole kind of like, hey, this is how our basic science then translates into like a potential policy for controlling something. And this was many years ago, so way before the COVID pandemic. But it was especially interesting as the pandemic happened, seeing, especially, studying virology and immunology, what I learned in that class like translated to the world situation. So I really liked that class for a lot of reasons. The other class that I really liked, which I think is probably going to shock people, is so I went to a Catholic school, and my other favorite class was called Women in the Christian Tradition class. It was a theology class. And I liked this class because the professor really challenged everything we thought. No matter what you thought, she challenged you and she pushed you and she forced you to really think about things from every single viewpoint and to always take into consideration the context of what you're reading. So particularly for that class, because it was women in the Christian tradition, a lot of what we studied was the Old Testament of the Bible, of the Christian Bible. And we were really challenged to think about the historical perspective of that and what the world was like at the time that these stories were happening, what these stories, when they were written, how they were written, who they were written by. And I hadn't had a class quite challenge me in the ways that she did in such an amazing way. And weirdly enough, that class potentially prepared me more for my scientific critical thinking career than other classes did because it challenged me. So it's my little soapbox. Obviously take science classes. They are important and they are amazing and you need them. But do not discredit what you can learn, especially when it comes to thinking processes from other classes. The other class that I really liked was just like general philosophy. For a brief bit, I almost minored in philosophy because again, your thinking process is so important. And so I really liked how it challenged that. While I was living in San Diego, I helped run a Greyhound adoption center. So I helped co-run like the adoption program. I don't know if that's a neat fact. I think it's kind of cool though. It's so I actually, alongside that, I learned a lot of like dog behavior and dog training, positive reinforcement based, and kind of learning that. So I guess it kind of goes back to the hobby thing. So I have a very large amount of knowledge about dog behavior, and I think it's, I don't know, interesting. I don't think it's something you would always necessarily expect